I really think we are at a crossroads, a kairos moment, a window of opportunity right now. America has been confronted and challenged from the east to the west coast, the north to the south, on her racism, her inequality, her injustice. But we must not allow them to do superficial things, to take down the Confederate flag while the spirit of the Confederacy is still alive and well, to remove a Columbus statue while the beliefs of Columbus are still alive and well and perpetrated every day is superficial. To take a woman's picture off a syrup bottle or a man's picture off of a rice box is nice, but it doesn't change lives or realities or opportunities. So those must be the facial, visual things that represent a real movement of changing society.
Welcome to Mentoring Kings. Where do we go from here? A look at social justice in America.
And when people say to me, why you a minister, why you a Catholic priest? I always say because of a Baptist minister named Martin Luther King Jr. And after he was murdered, not being able to go work with the movement, something that had been very key to me in all the stuff I had studied and read of him, that he would always say that we must and we will pass laws to allow people to vote, to stop segregation, to stop lynching, to make sure that civil rights are guaranteed. But he said we can never pass a law that'll change the heart. And the faith community had to be the place that changed the hearts of people. And that's why Dr. King always met in churches, where the movement was based and founded in the church. He always saw himself not as a civil rights activist, but as a minister of the gospel. Junior high school, after I finished that year, that August, I'm curious about a guy named Martin Luther King Jr. who was coming to Chicago and marching in Marquette Park. I talked to my friends to ride with me over there to see him. We rode our bikes, and first thing was we passed on 71st Street in about Tallman, Nazi headquarters, which I never knew existed so close to my house. My parents never would drive down that street, so I would never see it. And then went to the park and saw Dr. King. And two things that day changed me really forever. First was I saw people there who I knew, either lived in my neighborhood, went to my church, were fathers or big brothers of some of my classmates, and saw the hate, saw the anger, saw the racism that I'd never seen like this. And then I see Dr. King, and Dr. King coming through. I didn't even know at that time he had already been hit by a rock. And I see him coming through with no response to all the hate, but constantly saying, we're sisters and brothers and we have to live together. Rode home that day and said, there's something about this man that I want to know. And either he's crazy or he has some kind of strength. And became obsessed with him and read everything at that point he'd ever written up until 1966. Decided I wanted to go on to school and go join the movement with him. And I got ordained a deacon, spent a year at a church in Glenview, and then came here and was really, throughout that whole period, became very blessed to be influenced and shaped and friendship with many of the folks from the civil rights movement. I would go down to Dr. King's house, and Mrs. King gave me freedom to go through his papers, his work before all the universities got them. And then the Harry Belafontes and the Joe Lowrys and the C.T. Vivians and the John Lewises and Fred Shuttlesworth and those Andy Youngs, those people became a group that I was lucky enough and blessed enough to be mentored by, and decided then that I wanted to build a church that reflected the beloved community and the commitment to justice that Dr. King called churches to be. Unfortunately, in the last 20, 30 years, the church has lost, I believe, that identity and forgot who she's supposed to be. But my goal was to try to make here at St. Sabina's try to live as well as possible to build that kind of a church and a ministry. Unfortunately, I think the church has become even more distant from justice and from dealing with the racism. Many of the racists who rule in this country sit in pews before pulpits every Sunday. And how do they feel comfortable with the practices and the things they're doing and sitting in a pew on Sunday? And I think one of the reasons is because the church has what I call spiritual laryngitis. It's lost its identity. It preaches people to be comfortable and to be okay, and doesn't confront the evils of our society and the evils in our hearts. So I think the church not only has a responsibility, I think it is the number one responsibility. You know, government is not called to make people moral. Corporate's not called to make people moral. It's the faith communities. And until the faith communities regain their identity and their prophetic voice, I think that they will continue to be irrelevant. And so we've got to acknowledge it, we've got to repent from it, and we've got to turn it around. And I have tried to do that. I've often been called a thorn in the side of the Catholic Church. I've been told that I should leave the priesthood, and my thing has been no. I am going to continue to try to address not just the Catholic Church, but the Christian Church, the Jewish synagogue, the Muslim mosque, to become true to who their holy books, the Quran, the Torah, and the Bible, say one thing, and the church's reality has become something else. And so I think our job is to confront the church. Until the church gets right, it can never, proclaim to the masses. So I think the church has to address its failure, its fault, its sin, repent from it, and then make a change. And until it does that, again, I think many people, but particularly young people, will walk away and say, you're part of the problem. And they're right. So I think the church is at a crossroads, particularly where our country and where the world is right now. We're at a crossroads. And depending on which turn we make in this and what we see as our place right now is absolutely key for the future. We have communities with double-digit unemployment, and during the COVID-19 jumped up to new heights. We have underfunded and underperforming education. We have lack of economic development. We have most coming back from incarceration with no opportunity, nothing given them. Lack of housing, lack of healthy foods, lack of health care, lack of access to mental health care. And the list goes on and on. We lack investment opportunity, and this has been for decades. So we wonder why communities like this suffer from COVID-19 or suffer from the violence, for instance. These 17 communities where most of the violence takes place has those same realities in every one of those communities. You put two lions in a cage and you don't feed them, one is going to eat the other in survival of the fittest. Well, you put whole communities and you cage them in with no resources, no jobs, no housing, no healthy foods, no health care access, and it's survival of the fittest. I think with sometimes like that game, I think it's called Jenga, where people are pulling out different things and trying not to fall. Well, when you pull out enough pieces, you pull out jobs, pull out housing, pull out education, pull out economic development. When you start pulling all these things out, they collapse. And we're looking at collapsed communities because they have been deprived, ignored, and left to die for decades. And either we're going to force them at this time for the government and those corporate responsibilities to do something, or I think what they saw on the streets that first weekend of June is but a taste of what's yet to come. So I think defunding the police is absolutely important. We have budgets that are totally out of whack and unacceptable for police departments. and looking to see where that money does not need to be going there, where it should be going in prevention, and then how to use the money that is going there wisely. And so it's going to be effective, but not just pouring money in. For instance, perfect example, a couple weeks ago, we heard the superintendent say he's putting 1,200 more officers out on the street. Well, the reality is, although he put them out on the street, violence went through the roof. So that's not working. So let's re-examine the budgets, and let's have budgets that make sense and take money and use them other things that do make sense, where right now it's just wasted money. We've got to make sure that police solve crimes. 80% of the homicides in this city are not solved. So there's no deterrent to shooting if in fact nothing happens to you for shooting somebody or killing somebody. If 95 or 99% of those that kill are caught, that's a deterrent to say you've got a 99% chance of being caught and going to jail than a 20% chance of going to jail. We've got to keep the pressure on, while at the same time, we have to demand that we get to the roots of all this and not just do the stuff on the surface. You know, I mean, I'm glad we're taking down statues and I'm glad we're taking down Confederate flags, but at the end of the day, until policies are changed, until equity and equality, till South Side and West Side look like the North Side, till we have the same resources, the same economic investment and opportunities, until those roots are taking place, till contracts of the FOP and the police department are changed to stop protecting bad police, until we change those policies and then have action that comes out of that, it'll be business as usual. So we must make sure that as we march and as we protest and as we boycott and as we shut down things, that we make it very clear that we're not stopping until the policies are changed and until it's reflected in an action that's taken place in our communities, where we see all the things that have been neglected now are being put in place. And I don't want to hear from government, well, we have no money because now with COVID-19 we're broke. Well, whatever basement they went into to run off all that $1 trillion to give out across the country, go back in the basement, turn the machine on again, start printing more money. We've got to say to people, don't surrender the government, take over the government. So we've got to tell people to vote, and we've got to encourage people to run for office, and we got to support them and help them get in office and dismantle the system as is and create a government that's for and by the people. But if we don't engage in it, we are still going to become the victims of it. My greatest fear is the possibility of your hurt, your pain, your despair, and your hopelessness consume you. And so you give up or you stop fighting. We have a thing I push here at the church all the time, that you fight to win and you fight until you win. And that's kind of a mantra that I kind of push people, that you never give up, you know. And I think our faith teaches us, you know, I've read the end of the book. Righteousness wins, justice wins, peace wins, love wins. But it needs people on the battlefield to bring that win about and to bring that win in a closer time. The arc of justice bends towards truth, but guess where? Towards justice, but we have to bend it. But it's that we don't become consumed with our pain or our hurt and settle for victimness and being victims. Just getting away from that spirit that can make us have lack of self-esteem, lack of self-love, and settle for whatever's crumbs are thrown, that you never surrender to the enemy. And I think America is at a place of judgment, and either America is now going to make and have the courage to make the real changes to economically, as Dr. King was trying to do when he was killed, turn around the economics to a just system. Unless America does this now, America will be judged and America will implode. And I don't think America yet realizes that there are a whole group of people, young and old, that are saying no more. America, either change now or watch the wrath of God and the wrath of people bring you to your knees. That may sound harsh, but this is exactly what I believe right now. The church is the one I hold most responsible. First of all, religion, both Christian, Muslim, Jew, have been part of the problem. Their racist practices in their origins and in their carrying out in this early part of this country's origin. But I think the church is supposed to be the moral compass. It's supposed to be the prophetic voice that demands and calls the country to justice and calls the country to love and to peace and to equality and to equity. And I think that Dr. King tried to give the church that mission and that charge. I mean, to me, still one of his most powerful works was the letter from the Birmingham jail, when he challenged the religious community and the church community. I mean, whether it's the church, whether it's the Catholic Church, whether it's the Christian Protestant Church, whether it is government, until we acknowledge, repent, and turn around from that evil of which we were co-conspirators of, we lose our credibility, and not just with people, but more importantly, we lose our credibility with God. I mean, we're supposed to be his vessels in society. We're the ones who are called, no matter the different generations, to work the garden, to make it fruitful, to be the lamp that gives light to the world, to be the salt that seasons, to straighten the crooked, to smooth the rough, to fill in the valleys, to level the mountains. That's our job.
Thank you for tuning in to Mentoring Kings. Where do we go from here? To learn more about future episodes, visit www.mentoringking.com and join the conversation on social media by following and liking @Mentoring King on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.